You might think that regions closer to the equator have warmer temperatures than regions closer to the pole. This is true on average, but there are other factors besides latitude that affect climate. One is elevation, or the distance above sea level. At higher elevations, Earth's atmosphere is thinner. It does not hold the sun's heat as well as it does at sea level. Imagine a Colorado mountaintop. It is usually several degrees cooler than a Missouri forest about 500 miles away, yet both are at the same latitude or the same distance from the equator. Look at the elevation map on your interactive desk map to see the variations found in the United States. Winds and ocean currents affect climate too. The sun warms the air and the oceans. Its rays fall most directly in the tropic zone near the equator. As air warms in the atmosphere, it rises. As the air rises, it cools. Water in the ocean also follows a regular pattern. Warm ocean currents that originate in the tropics travel around the world. These currents can heat places far from the equator that would otherwise be cold. Look at the following diagrams of wind and ocean patterns. Can you see why winters on the North Dakota plain are much colder than in the coastal area in the state of Washington at the same latitude? Let's see what they mean. See the currents right here, right? And right here is where they're talking about and showing you that there's a cold current right here, but in the middle, there's no ocean current to keep you warm. All right, let's go back up. Okay, let's go down. That's right. The second main ingredient of climate is precipitation. That is the moisture that falls from the sky as rain, snow, sleet, or hail. Once again, it is the sun that drives the process. The sun heats the water in oceans, lakes, and rivers. As it heats, water at the surface evaporates. It becomes water vapor and rises into the air. Water vapor cools as it rises. The cooling causes it to condense into tiny droplets of water. The droplets come together to form clouds. At a certain point, the droplets may become too heavy to stay in the air. They fall to earth as precipitation. Some precipitation gets stored as snow and ice in glaciers. Some soaks into the ground. This is called infiltration, and some runs off to form streams. The streams come together to form rivers. Most rivers flow into an ocean or a lake. There, evaporation begins again. This process is called the hydrological cycle or water cycle, which we learn about in science. It's our next unit. Precipitation does not fall evenly on the earth. Clouds usually do not form in areas where the pressure of the atmosphere is high. These areas are often found on the dry side of mountain ranges. People who live in Oregon and Washington know all about such rain shadows. The western parts of these states get a lot of rain. Winds from the west blow warm, moist air toward the Cascade Mountains and form clouds. The mountains block most moisture from reaching the land to their east. The pressure of the atmosphere is greater on that side. Clouds evaporate, the air warms. East of the mountains, Oregon and Washington are dry. Rain shadow in India. Summer monsoon winds carry moist air from the Indian Ocean. These winds strike the western Ghat mountain range in western India. As air rises, it cools and drops its moisture as rain. Cities on the upwind side of the mountain receive plenty of rainfall. Cities on the downwind side in the rain shadow receive relatively little. Climate shapes the land. Just as landforms affect climate, climate has shaped the land over time. The water cycle creates rivers and river valleys. It helps create fertile soil in the Midwest and carve out the mighty Grand Canyon. Processes deep in the earth have formed mountains. Mountains create rain shadow, which in turn cause deserts. And let's not forget about glaciers. At times in our planet's history, the atmosphere has been much cooler than it is now. The colder temperatures cause ice to cover 3/10 of the Earth's surface. The most recent ice age ended about 10,000 years ago. During that time, ice covered 2/3 of North America. Most of Canada lay under a thick sheet of ice, and so did the United States as far south as southern Illinois. Glaciers carved out the Great Lakes. They created the flat plains and prairies of the Middle States. Runoff from the melting glaciers created the Mississippi River. It caused large lakes to form in regions that are now deserts. Think about how sun and rain, wind and sea, rivers, mountains, and glaciers all affect climate. What natural processes have helped form the climate of the region where you live?